My daughter died and left everything to her husband. At the time, I thought it made sense. He was the child's father. He would take care of things. I even defended him to the rest of the family. He's grieving. Don't push him. Until last night. My phone rang close to 11 p.m. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I heard my grandchild's voice, small, shaking, like they were hiding in a bathroom. Grandpa, I'm sorry. I'm hungry. I'm scared. Dad told me not to bother anyone, but I can't take it anymore. I froze. Where are you? Where's your dad? A pause. Then, he left. I don't know where to go. He said, I should figure it out. He said, if I call you, he'll be mad. I sat up straight. One thought hit me. That's impossible. Because according to the will, that man has everything. The house, the money, everything my daughter left behind. So why is a child sneaking a call, begging their grandfather for help? I forced my voice steady. Listen to me. Lock the door. Stay where you are. I'm coming. I hung up, looked at my daughter's photo on the table. I used to believe that leaving everything meant protecting your child, but some people can be given everything and still leave a child begging for help like they have no one. And in that moment, I understood this wasn't just about money. This was about a child being abandoned inside a house built from their mother's will. My daughter, Hannah, was the kind of person who always put others first. When she got seriously ill, she told me something I'll never forget. Dad, if anything happens to me, he'll take care of the child. I just want things to stay simple. Simple. She didn't want conflict. She didn't want her child dragged into disputes. So in her will, the house, the insurance, the savings, almost everything, was left to her husband, Jason, the day she signed it. I hesitated. Are you sure? I asked. Do you want to set up a separate fund for the child? Hannah shook her head. No need, Dad. He's the father. I trusted my daughter, and I trusted Jason, because I wanted to. After the funeral, Jason played the role of the devoted single father perfectly. He held the child in front of everyone. Every word he said sounded right. I'll stay strong for the kid. I won't let them go without. Watching that, I thought, at least the child still has a father. I even helped out financially, not because Jason lacked anything, but because I loved my grandchild. But help turned into habit. Jason started asking for extras, short-term help, urgent needs, and me, afraid the child might suffer. I kept sending money. Then I noticed something else. I was being pushed out. Whenever I wanted to visit, she's just getting stable. When I called, Jason was always right there, listening. When I asked about school, he answered vaguely. I told myself, as long as the child is cared for, it's fine. Until last night, when my grandchild called me for help, that's when I realized leaving assets behind doesn't automatically become care. It becomes power for the person holding the money. I drove to Jason's house that same night. No call, no warning. I didn't need permission. I needed my grandchild safe. The living room lights were off. The house was silent. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I called Jason. No answer. I knocked harder. Then, a door upstairs creaked open. My grandchild peeked out. Red eyes, messy hair, holding a jacket like it was a life raft. They ran down the stairs quickly, then stopped at the last step, like they were afraid to make noise. Grandpa, their voice cracked. I knelt and pulled them into a hug. I didn't ask why right away. I asked the only thing that mattered. Are you hurt? Have you eaten? A small shake of the head. Dad said there's noodles in the cabinet, but I don't know how to use the stove. He said, I'm old enough. I swallowed hard. Old enough is what people say when they want to avoid responsibility. I looked around. The fridge almost empty. Late school notices on the table. Unopened envelopes. Everything told the same story. No one was actually running this house. I took my grandchild to the car and stopped at a convenience store. They ate fast, too fast, then suddenly paused. Like they remembered something. They looked at me and whispered, "Don't tell Dad I called you. He said if I tell, he'll send me away." I'm scared. That's when I understood. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was control. I placed a hand on their shoulder. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. The adults did. And one question hit me harder than anything else. If Jason has everything, why is a child still forced to beg for help, like they've been left behind?" The next morning, I drove my grandchild to school. They didn't say much, just stared out the window, like they were waiting for anger to come crashing down. I looked at them. A thin jacket, worn-out shoes, a backpack with frayed straps. A child who had been left. Everything shouldn't look like that. And then, right as I stood by the school gate, I saw Jason's car drive past. Brand new, shiny, not the kind of car you drive when you're struggling. I watched it disappear and felt something inside me go cold. I called him. This time, he picked up, his voice groggy, irritated, like I was the inconvenience. "Why are you calling so early?" I didn't waste time. "The child called me last night, said they were hungry." "Where were you?" Jason sighed. "Dad, you're overreacting. I just stepped out for a bit. They need to learn independence." Independence? A child begging for help at nearly midnight. And he calls that independence? I asked again. "Where is the money Hannah left? Why is the child going without?" His tone shifted instantly, straight into victim mode. "You're questioning me again? Do you know how much pressure I'm under? I do everything for that kid." I went quiet for a few seconds. I didn't need to argue. I needed evidence. Because I was starting to see the pattern. Jason maintained the image of a good father, while leaving the child to fend for themselves. And every time he was questioned, he used the same line. "Don't you trust me?" That's why my grandchild called me. Not because there was no money, but because there was no decent adult in that house. And the moment that clicked, I knew my next move. This wasn't about saving the child for one night. I had to pull them out of a life of quiet neglect. I met with Dana, a family and estate lawyer. I handed her a copy of the will and asked one simple question. If he has everything, why is the child still begging for help? Dana didn't speculate. She checked. One day later, she called me back. "Frank, the assets are still there, but the money has been flowing." Flowing where? That question cut like a blade. Dana broke it down, clean and direct. The insurance payout had been withdrawn and transferred into a personal account. Part of the savings fund had been liquidated early. The house showed signs of being leveraged, possibly refinanced or used as collateral. And the spending patterns included multiple charges unrelated to the child. I sat there, ears ringing. My daughter left that money to protect her child. He read it like a blank check. Then Dana said something that made everything click. If the funds are being misused and the child is being neglected, this is no longer a family matter. This may qualify as neglect and financial exploitation tied to the child's welfare. Neglect. It's a heavy word, but I had seen it with my own eyes. An empty fridge, a hungry child, a child afraid to call family. I looked at the transaction list Dana printed out. Restaurants, shopping, travel, and at the same time, school notices about unpaid fees. My grandchild secretly asking for food. I clenched my fist, not out of revenge, but because I refused to stay a bystander any longer. I looked at Dana and asked, "What's the next step?" She answered, "Protect the child first, then gather clean evidence, and we ask the court to step in." Dana laid out the plan, clear, precise, no room for emotion to take over. First, prioritize the child's safety. If the child is being neglected, we need a plan for them to stay with me temporarily, or at the very least, a fixed visitation schedule. No more see them when Jason allows it. Second, gather clean Evidence. Not stories. Not assumptions. Verification from the school, from doctors if applicable, and messages or notes showing Jason restricting the child from contacting family. Third, cut off the money route. From now on, any support I provide goes directly to the school or necessary services, never through Jason again. Because once money passes through him, it disappears. Fourth, prepare for court. File for temporary guardianship or adjust the custody arrangement, along with a request for financial transparency tied to the child. If needed, social services step in to evaluate the living conditions. I asked, my voice rough. He's going to say I'm trying to take his child. Dana nodded. He will. That's the last weapon of someone who doesn't want to be examined. But when you have school records, financial documents, and the child's own account, the court looks at facts, not performance. I looked at the photo of my grandchild on my phone, red eyes, clutching a jacket in the middle of the night. I didn't need more motivation. I said, all right, I'm in. Dana gave one final reminder. Good. But remember, don't confront Jason emotionally. We do this the official way, because the goal isn't to win an argument. The goal is to make sure that child never has to call for help again. That morning, following Dana's plan, I didn't argue with Jason. I went straight to the one place that doesn't lie, the school. I asked to meet the homeroom teacher, saying I wanted to update the emergency contact. She looked at me for a moment, then sighed, like she had been holding this in for a while. Sir, I don't know if I should say this, but your grandchild has been coming to class looking very tired lately. Some days, they ask for extra food. Sometimes they say there's no one at home. My heart dropped. I asked gently, does Jason attend parent meetings? She shook her head. Almost never. We've called, we've messaged. Usually no response. One time, your grandchild said, Dad is busy. I asked her for written confirmation, an email noting the situation, tuition status, parent communication, and any observations related to neglect. She agreed, because she understood this wasn't curiosity. This was about a child's safety. As I left the school, I got hit again. The finance office told me tuition was overdue. Multiple notices had already been sent. I stood there in the parking lot, taking a slow breath. My daughter left everything to her husband, so her child would be taken care of. But that man took everything and still left the child asking for food at school. And that's when it became clear. This wasn't financial hardship. This was systematic neglect. Neglect of the child, while taking care of himself just fine. I texted Dana, we have confirmation from the school. What's next? That night, I didn't question my grandchild. I just sat beside them, handed them a warm glass of milk, and let them breathe. After a while, they spoke quietly. Grandpa, I don't want to make Dad mad. I answered gently, you didn't do anything wrong. You just told the truth. They looked down at their hands. Dad said I'm not allowed to talk about things at home. He said if I tell, people will take me away from him. That's the chain, the thing that keeps a child silent, to protect a family that's already breaking them. I asked softly, where does your dad go at night? They hesitated, then said, I don't know. He changes into nice clothes and leaves. I stay home alone. He says I'm old enough. I kept my voice steady. Are you scared? They nodded, eyes red. I'm scared of the door. That's when it hit me. Neglect isn't just about missing food. It's about a child living every day, not knowing if anyone will be there tomorrow. I pulled them close and said, firm but calm, from now on, you don't have to ask anyone for help. Calling me was the right thing to do. They let out a breath, like they had been carrying something heavy for too long. And I understood. A child's words are the strongest moral evidence there is. But for a court to hear them, they have to become clean, properly gathered evidence. Dana was right. Don't push the child to repeat the story. Just document what's said. and let professionals handle it the right way if needed. Rick the investigator followed Jason for 2 days. I didn't go. I stayed with my grandchild. I needed them to feel one thing clearly. Grandpa is a place of safety, not another storm. On Monday night, Rick sent photos. Jason's car parked outside a restaurant. Inside with a woman. Wine. Laughter. A new phone. A shining watch. The kind of life a struggling single father doesn't have. I looked at the photos. I wasn't shocked anymore. I just saw it clearly. He had energy for a new life, but none for his child. Rick sent more. Jason stopped by a furniture store, then an apartment, and during all of it, my grandchild was home alone. I asked Rick, "Do we have proof he's leaving the child alone?" Rick replied, "Neighbors confirm they often see the child home by themselves. The child's room light is on. No adult present. I've logged entry and exit times." That was enough. Neglect is neglect. I pulled up the timeline, the inheritance transfers, the money I had been sending. It lined up perfectly. With the period Jason started living well. My daughter left him everything. To raise her child, he used everything. To build a new life, and left his own child living like an afterthought. That night, I texted Dana, "That's enough. Let's set the trap and make him talk." Dana drafted a message for me, polite on the surface, but baited just enough to hook a greedy man. "Jason, I want to set up a major education fund for the child, but I'll need to review the spending tied to Hannah's money. Let's meet tomorrow night to sign the paperwork." Jason replied fast, "Of course, Dad, thank you. No question about the child. No, are you okay? Just gratitude." Because he thought more money was coming. The next night, I sat at Riverside Cafe. Dana was at another table, recording on Legally, as instructed. The goal was simple: get Jason to say it. That he saw the inheritance as his money, and the child as a burden. Jason walked in, sat down, and didn't waste a second. "How much are you planning for the fund?" I stayed calm. "Before we talk about money, why did the child have to call me asking for food?" Jason frowned. "What did you hear?" "Kids exaggerate." I placed the school email on the table. Overdue tuition. No parent contact. Then one more line. "The child has been asking for extra food." Jason glanced at it. His face tightened. And I knew he had to choose now. Admit it, or lie deeper. And liars always expose themselves. I asked the final question. "Hannah left that money to raise her child. Why is that child begging?" Jason swallowed. He started shifting into victim mode, but I had already closed every exit. Jason switched tactics fast. "Dad, you don't understand. I'm under pressure too." I looked him straight in the eye. "No one is stopping you from moving on." "But your child is hungry." Jason snapped back. "She eats. She just likes to exaggerate for attention." I lifted my phone and showed him the recording from the night before or the message from my grandchild. "I'm hungry. I'm scared." I didn't play it loudly. I just let him see it. Jason went pale. Then he did what people like him always do when they're cornered. He got angry. "So now you're turning me into the bad guy? You want to take her away from me, don't you?" I stayed calm. "I want you to take care of her." Jason clenched his jaw, then said the one line Dana needed most. "Hannah's money is mine. I was her husband. I have the right to spend it. Stay out of it." That was the end of it. Because the money may have been left in the husband's name, but once a child is being neglected, the court looks at the child's best interests. And a man saying, "I have the right to spend it," while that child is hungry, tuition is overdue, and the parent is absent, that is practically a confession. Dana stepped over and placed her card on the table. "We'll proceed through the court from here. Frank will be seeking intervention to ensure the child's safety." Jason shot to his feet. "Are you people insane?" Too late. His own mouth had already buried him. The very next morning, Dana filed for temporary guardianship and requested a formal evaluation of the living environment. At the same time, Because of the clear signs of neglect, social services were notified to begin their own review through the proper process. I didn't feel good about bringing outsiders in. I just knew it was necessary, because if I kept keeping the peace, that child would go right on being hungry and afraid in silence. The court issued a temporary order. My grandchild would stay with me during the evaluation period, or at the very least, be placed under a tightly supervised arrangement. Jason was also ordered to provide records showing how the inheritance money had been spent, since there was now reason to suspect it had not been used for the child's benefit. Jason shouted at me in the hallway, "You destroyed my family." I looked him straight in the eye. Your family was already broken the moment you let your child beg for help. My grandchild didn't burst into tears. They just let out one long breath, like they had been carrying something heavy for too long. That's when I understood. Children don't need a performance. They need safety. Dana reminded me, don't speak badly about the father in front of the child. Just keep the child stable. The court will handle the rest. I nodded. I wasn't getting revenge. I was stopping a chain of neglect using the law and the truth. The first week, my grandchild stayed with me. They ate, but kept looking at me like I might change my mind. They asked permission for everything. Can I have some water? Can I take a snack? A child who's properly cared for doesn't ask permission just to live. I told them, in this house, you don't have to ask to eat. If you're hungry, you eat. The first night, they flinched at the sound of a door. I didn't press. I just left a nightlight on and sat reading outside their room until they fell asleep. One day, they said quietly, "Grandpa, I thought I was a bother." I answered, "You're not a bother. You were just being forgotten." Little by little, they started to smile again. Not the kind of smile meant to please someone. A real one. The kind that comes from feeling safe. And that was something my son-in-law could never buy. Even with everything my daughter left behind. Dana gave me an update. Jason was scrambling, trying to build a story that I was overstepping. But the school records, properly gathered statements, and his own words, "I have the right to spend it," had already crushed that narrative. I looked at Hannah's photo and said quietly, "You left everything because you trusted. I don't blame you. I'm just correcting the mistake of the man who held the money." My daughter left everything to her husband, believing her child would be protected. But a will doesn't turn a bad man into a good one. It only transfers power. And if that power lands in the hands of someone selfish, the child pays the price. I learned the hardest truth. A child asking for help is stronger evidence than any document. If a child has to secretly call a grandparent, has to ask for food, has to ask to feel safe, then the adults have already failed. No matter how many zeros are in the account, Jason may keep the assets for a while, but he no longer gets to use them to neglect his child while pretending to be a good father. So let me ask you, what would you do? Would you say, "Let's not make a scene," just to keep appearances? Or would you accept being called intrusive, being disliked, being talked about, to stop a situation where only the child is suffering? I chose the child, because money can be earned again, but childhood and the feeling of being safe, once lost, is gone.